Thank you for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. Today we have the 148 scale de Havilland Chipmunk T.20, and I am going to build this kit right here for you on this video. I have already done an unboxing of this kit about a week ago, and if you haven't watched that unboxing already, I'll leave a link to that in the description of the video. So without further ado, let's quickly begin with the build of the Chipmunk. And so as usual, I began the construction with the assembly of the cockpit and the seat. And here you can see I'm using my handy dandy X-Acto knife to clear up that little bit of flash that is left around. The parts are crisp and nicely molded. And here you can see I'm going to drill out 2 holes in the bottom of the cockpit floor as per the instructions. These drilled out holes will actually help me in fixing the rest of the cockpit parts like the control column, the seat, and the instrument panel later on. And as you can see, the front seat kind of slides in beautifully without any problems at all, but the rear seat actually has 2 locator pins in the front. These locator pins basically have to be aligned with the rear section of the floor. This took a little bit of understanding, and once I was able to figure it out, the assembly came out pretty nice, as you can see. Right then, after cutting out the fuselage parts from the sprues, I painted the cockpit interiors black and then began working with the decals. The cockpit decals were really small and you could choose to ignore them, but I decided to go ahead with decking up of the cockpit with these decals. They do make the cockpit look a little better, but the problem here is that since the Chipmunk cockpit is entirely black, once you fix the cockpit floor assembly inside and close the fuselage halves, it's not really going to be visible. For that little bit of worn out look, I dry brushed some silver onto the cockpit parts and the floor, and then assembled the 2 fuselage halves together. This little pin helps the prop to rotate in the end, and it fits inside the engine assembly like so. And then I closed up the second half of the engine assembly as well, and you can see that the fit is pretty nice and snug. I then used my cyanoacrylate glue, which is Fevikwik, and just with a drop of glue down there, I fixed the engine parts together and then painted up the engine black. I then used these 3 acrylic markers. This is from my acrylic marker set, and I wanted to see how well they help in painting up, although you see a very unexpected and non-conforming paint that I'm painting out here in the engine. But my take on that was that since the engine is going to be inside and I am going to close up all the panels, it's not really going to be visible. So I used these paints to experiment with how the paints will finally look, and I was pretty satisfied with it. They really dry up quickly and help with detailing those smaller parts that may be difficult with a brush. Alright, so the rear bulkhead of the engine was then painted up with dark green, and then again the same acrylic paint marker set was used to detail the smaller parts. And here you can see me fitting the rear bulkhead of the engine within the fuselage. Now this assembly is tricky because you have to fit the top part of the covers first, because this will help to align the engine once you start with the assembly. So you cannot fit the side parts before you fit the top ones. So that is something you'll have to be careful of while assembling. The instrument panel decals, they conform nicely, and then I assembled the dashboards, basically the front and the rear dashboards, into the fuselage. Pretty simple assembly, this one. Okay, so very fiddly parts on the engine. This is the side harnesses of the engine, and it's very flimsy, very fiddly as well. You have to be very careful while fixing it, although it has proper notches given wherein the harnesses attach, and the harnesses in turn fit very nicely within the 4 holes given in the rear bulkhead. But you'll have to be very careful in dealing with it, because it just seems like, you know, a little bit of extra pressure and this part is going to snap in a second. And here you can see, as I was talking earlier, that top cover helps you to align the engine within the nose section of the aircraft. All right, time to fix the side covers then. And here you can see how beautifully they align with that nose. I again used my Fevikwik cyanoacrylate glue to glue these parts together. It does leave a slight gap on top, but that will be addressed at a later stage with filler. All right, so here it is, all the filler in all the places that it was required, the nose cover section and the seam line extending from the nose right up till the tail section. Now, I assembled the wings, and the wings were slightly wider at the trailing edge section, and so a little bit of sanding had to be done there in order to help it align with the underside of the fuselage of the Chipmunk. Top surfaces of the wings, they fit very snug. And then I moved to the assembly of the ailerons, which was again a very simple affair. It's got this beautifully aligned locator pin, and both the ailerons fit very nicely. Right, time for the tail section then. Again, the tail section is one single piece with the top and the bottom halves of the elevators basically that literally align like Lego. And then once that was done, I moved to the painting phase, beginning with the black primer. So I'm using this 4S black paint, which actually also acts as a primer. So I painted the entire body of the Chipmunk black. And this was done in order to ensure that the next paint that you'll see shortly, which is the 4S bright chrome paint, you know, it gives a beautiful shine if there is black underneath that paint. And this I've learned through various experiments. And here you can see how beautifully that paint now shines on the Chipmunk. Of course, subsequent weathering and subsequent painting will dull down the paint a little bit, but then the initial paint coat is very shiny. And then I took out a print of the Chipmunk that I was attempting to paint in the Portuguese Air Force scheme. Yes, a very lesser known Air Force, but I wanted to make it unique. And so I masked off the wing sections and the rear fuselage section with doubled up carpenter tape and pulled out my Fevicryl yellow color. This is basically Fevicryl golden yellow, and I put it in my airbrush, thinned it down with water, and this is where the woes with yellow began. Now, my initial thought was that there is silver underneath the yellow, and there's also a coat of black primer underneath that silver, and so the yellow should be easier to paint. However, this still took about 7 coats of yellow to make it look as bright as it looks right now on your screen. All right, and then time for some anti-reflection treatment, and this is simply Fevicryl black that is being painted This is thinned down with water and it is painted on the front section of the nose. Finally, it was time to apply the decals, and here you can see that I am putting down the Portuguese flag here. This is actually painted on sticker paper. So I wanted to experiment with this white sticker paper that I had recently purchased, and you can see that that flag has come out really nice on the white sticker paper, whereas the number 1308, the serial number, is actually a decal which I printed myself. Similarly, if I move on to the fuselage sides, the Academia da Força Aérea, I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, but the Air Force Academy or the Portuguese Air Force Academy decal also came out looking good. The font, etc., was very nice, and it conformed nicely to the silver surface. The coat of arms decal was also printed by myself, with the only problem that, you know, the white section underneath that could not be printed on decal paper that I actually used, but nonetheless I just let it be the way it was. The rest of the decals, including this rescue decal and the 60-year anniversary decal, were of course a nice print and conformed nicely to the surface. Right then, final step is to weather the aircraft, and I just used a very subtle weathering. All of the weathering that I did was on the underside of the aircraft, and this is simply Pebeo oil paints that I have utilized to show some dirt and grime on the underside of the Chipmunk. And the final step was to assemble the canopy of the Chipmunk together. The side windows, the front windshield and the rear windshields are actually aligned at very, very strange angles, and you need to assemble this little jig as per step number 50, because without the help of this jig there is no way that you'll be able to ever get the right angles on the canopy assembly. So I put the jig together, and looking at the instructions, I just simply put the parts there, glued the parts together, and made the canopy ready for final assembly. So here we are, ladies and gentlemen, de Havilland DHC-1 Chipmunk in the Portuguese Air Force T20 scheme. Now, there is a slight difference between the T10 and the T20 in terms of the engine and the avionics, but largely the airframe and the exterior looks of both remains the same, and hence I went ahead with the Portuguese version. Now, my 2 cents with this kit are that it is an excellent kit to work with, considering the fact that it has only 83 parts, so just enough parts to keep the build nice and enjoyable. And as I mentioned in my unboxing video as well, the price point at which I purchased this kit definitely gave me my value for money, because the kit is easy to build and the instructions are really easy to understand. The only challenge I faced was when I wanted to actually print the Portuguese Air Force Academy decals. The second challenge that I faced was the assembly of the 5 different parts of the canopy on the jig, but then again the jig is a very nice touch that they've given to this kit in order to help you build up the 5 different parts of the canopy in the proper angles and glue them together. So all in all, I've enjoyed this build. I hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed building the kit. If you like this video and this content, please click the thumbs up and do consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again in the next video. Bye bye. Take care.